Hello, everyone, and welcome to MHEDA Talks. I'm your host, Sherry Altergut, the Chief Experience Officer at the CX Edge. Well, we have a treat for you today. We are in our last podcast of 2022, ending 3 years, going into our fourth year of doing these podcasts. So, first, I'd like to thank everybody for sticking with us these last 3 years. We hope the content has been relevant and valuable to you. We look forward to our schedule that we're already started planning for 2023. To round off the year, we have a very special guest. We have Katie Yates. She's the Equipment Distribution Manager at Carolina Handling. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. The end of the year podcast is always, it's a sense of we made it through the whole year. We like to round things out. And I'm really excited that you decided to join us today. So thank you. I like to start a little bit of just getting to know you better and kind of your role within the organization as we go through this conversation. So I was hoping you could give us a little bit of background of Carolina Handling and then also how you got started in this industry.
Yeah, so Carolina Handling is the Raymond dealership for most of the Southeast. We have 7 depots. We have a little over 700 associates that handle North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and the Panhandle of Florida for all Raymond forklifts. And I got started with Carolina Handling. I moved up to the Carolinas from Florida, personal reasons, and was kind of looking around. Didn't really know anything about the industry. Found Carolina Handling, and although I didn't know anything about the industry, I knew I found a home with Carolina Handling and just really kind of found my people, and it's just developed from there.
That's awesome. I've worked with Carolina Handling in the past. I was part of a Raymond dealership, and I know that Carolina Handling was always a standard within the organization, and there's some great people over there. Um, what would you say? Maybe you can explain a little bit what your role is there, and what really drawed you to it. What you really love about your current role.
So I am the equipment distribution manager, and basically what that equates to is once the forklift is built at the factory, everything that happens along the way from the time the forklift leaves the factory until we deliver it to the end user kind of falls down to one of my teams. So really part of that distribution model and how we manage getting the right equipment out to the customer timely and accurately is really where we focus our efforts. Um, I really love what I do here. I love the people, of course. I love the people inside Carolina Handling and all the relationships I've developed throughout the dealer network. But mostly, I really love that we're a solutions provider. I think that you see that kind of all throughout the Raymond network. But to know at the end of the day that we came through for that customer, that that customer was always put first, and that we've done everything that we can do to make that customer experience what it should be, is really kind of, what keeps me going every day and what I really enjoy the most.
And these days, that's certainly no small feat, especially getting equipment to customers on time when they need it has become more and more challenging, certainly over the last few years.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
and I know in your role, you're in a management role and you've managed both men and women. And I was hoping to kind of drive the discussion just maybe around some gender differences in the workplace. Do you have a different style or have you noticed any differences when you're managing men versus when you're managing women?
Yeah, I think naturally that kind of just happens. I mean, really it comes down to the individual. You have to manage every individual differently and what their drivers are. But I think for women, there's an added dynamic, right, with their family at home, and normally they're the caregivers, and you kind of have to work through that a little bit. But um, mostly in the communication between men and women, men definitely I think like to be communicated different um, than women do. But really just understanding that person and what drives them and how they want to be communicated to, I think is really important. And that kind of helps build that relationship and that bond that you have with that individual.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, and something we don't talk about enough is that management really is more about the individual than necessarily what their background is, or what their gender is, or what their race is. That it all comes down to individuality. So do you have a mixed team? Do you have both men and women on your team today?
I do, yes. So I have mostly men, but I do have a few women. We do have a couple of technicians that are women here at Carolina Handling, and one that I work with on a daily basis. So it is a mix, and everybody brings their certain strengths and their talents to the team, and really, it's what makes us successful as a whole.
Yeah. To get to your position and in the material handling industry, I think we've certainly come a long way. We talk a lot about getting more women in this space. And I think anybody getting to any higher level position in any company has to overcome some challenges. So I was curious as to what maybe specific challenges you've faced to rise to your position at Carolina Handling today.
Yeah, I think this industry is just generally kind of intimidating to women. And coming into it, I really wasn't sure about the industry. I didn't know a lot about it. So coming in and learning and kind of playing catch up to what the industry is in general, I think was kind of right out of the gate where I really had to kind of put my focus and understand that, but then continuing to rise through the organization, really just kind of having those networks and understanding, how to go about building those relationships, I think was key for me. And I'm just hard headed enough that I didn't want to stop. So when I'd get that feedback, in the beginning, I would internalize it and really try to reflect on myself. But then I've learned that those are all teaching moments, right? Moments that I can learn and be a better leader, be a better associate, be a better mentor, and being able to cultivate that and really kind of use it for good, I think has really been instrumental in my growth here, and just having confidence in myself and in my abilities.
Yeah, confidence is so key to that. And I want to go back to something you said in the beginning. I think there's an intimidation about what you don't know, and the industry's so big and there's so many different elements to it that I know starting out, it can certainly seem like I'm never going to know all of this stuff. There's just way too much to know. I certainly felt like that when I first came in. um, how did you learn about the industry? What resources did you use or tools, or how did you go about that piece of it?
Yeah, I was really lucky when I started. I started out as a rental coordinator, so I had to really get involved with the equipment, understand the ins and outs of the equipment. I was surrounded by a really good team and a really good group of people who have been here for many years and been in the industry for many years. So spending that time with them and soaking up all that knowledge and them investing that into me has been really key to me understanding the industry as a whole. But I honestly, I've been here 15 years and I still learn something new every day.
Yeah, I hear that. And I do worry sometimes, especially with people coming into the space and a lot of the work from home initiatives, which I think is a lot of benefit, that some of the education pieces are being lost in today's environment. Just because I agree with you, I mean, I learned the same way about really doing and going to distribution centers and seeing how the equipment worked. And I don't know if the newer generation today is getting as much of that hands-on experience that to me I think is the foundation of really learning in this space. Have you had any of those issues that you've had to try to kind of work around and still make a space for education but still accommodate the value of work from home?
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that so much. I think that a lot of times, we see new hires or people come on or the newer generation that are not in the office every day and they're not part of just the conversations that you hear people have just in the office, talking about a certain order or a certain customer. And when they're not here and they don't see it and they don't hear it, they're missing out on that opportunity. So, really, how do we continue to train and coach and teach our people in a remote location? Is sometimes a challenge. I think we've done a good job here of trying to, be in purposeful with having people come into the office and making the most of that time when we do have them and have different programs or different opportunities for them to learn about the industry or the equipment or even what we do inside our organization. But it's definitely a challenge, and I think it's one that most organizations we need to evolve and continue to figure out better ways to do that.
Agreed. There's always a better way.
Right.
Um, I think going back to women in the industry, and there are a lot of women in this space in the industry. We've certainly made tremendous inroads, over the last 20, 30 years. But I still see a tremendous lack of women in leadership positions within the organization. So what do you think are the benefits of having more women in leadership driven positions as opposed to, grassroots types positions?
Mhm. I think anytime you can have diversity in leadership within any organization, you're really going to benefit from it. I think women tend to, be maybe a little more detail oriented or look at something from a different perspective. I think that women probably tend to, when they're working with an individual or coaching an individual, they kind of look below the surface and really try to understand different aspects about that person or about their life. So I think that women definitely bring a different, like I said, a different perspective to leadership as a whole. And I think as long as we're not afraid to speak up and have a little confidence in what we're doing, I think that we can really add value overall to an organization and the direction they're going.
Yeah, I totally agree with all that. And then, there is a profitability benefit to it as well. I mean, I think with the different perspectives and all that, it makes the organization better. But I think too, people need to start looking that the customers that are purchasing material handling equipment, they have changed and evolved, which 20 years ago, every buying decision maker was a man. And I think today you're starting to see greater diversification on the customer side. And I don't know that material handling industry side has quite caught up with that. So
Mhm.
there's a real tangible, just financial benefit to having more women in that space that know how to communicate maybe with women buyers or different types of male buyers. And so I just think overall, there's such a tremendous asset to elevating more women to leadership positions in this space.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't see a lot of women in sales in this industry. And I think
Hmm.
that the more direction, the more we move to that direction, I think you're spot on.
But what would you say is the barrier to more women being in leadership? So, what do you believe? Why don't we have more women in those positions today?
I think that there's not a really large network. I think that we're lacking a network for women leaders. Finding that key network, finding those key mentors, finding someone who's going to pour into you is so important to your development into becoming a leader. And I think that there's really just not that big of a support group out there in general for women. And I think the more that we can foster that environment and pour into our next level of leaders, I think that we can change that and really see more women coming along and encourage them to have confidence in themselves and what they're doing.
I totally agree. It goes if you can't see her, you can't beat her. And the more examples that we have, like you and other women in leadership positions in this space, I think certainly help that cause. But I'd say it's up to all of us, men and women within the organization. It's not a woman's issue; it's a people issue, and both men and women need to be part of the same page, in helping achieve that dream. So I totally agree. You've mentioned the word confidence a few times and when we've been talking today. And I love that because I think it's such a foundation, of success is having a level of confidence. Um, and I think people struggle with self confidence and there's a lot of imposter syndrome. And, how did you really get to a place where you're confident, in who you are, but also what you do?
And I guess I mention it a lot because it kind of resonates with me because it is something that I have struggled with throughout my career, and like I said early on, I would get this feedback or this coaching and I would kind of internalize it and look at myself as like, what did I do wrong? But being able to turn that around and really use it to propel me forward, I think has been important. Um, the other piece of it too is I had to kind of stop and look at myself and say, you know what, people are putting me in this positions, right? To go and do this job or to take on this team or take on this project, and they had confidence in me. Why don't I have confidence in myself? So really, kind of being able to understand that and look and say, I do have the skills, right? And I do have the abilities, and they do want to hear what I have to say. So I mean, it's nothing that happened overnight. It's something that I've had to work on, but I think it's been such a key foundation for me and my development and my growth is to know that yes, I am equipped to do this job, and yes, I am equipped to run this team and make a difference in the organization.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. I think confidence doesn't mean you're lacking any level of self doubt. I mean, I think we all have certain levels of self doubt, but it's kind of pushing through that. And
Mhm.
I think really just being authentic. I think a lot of times people just try to pretend that there's something that they think everybody else wants them to be, and they're not that person. So immediately your confidence level will go down. But if you're authentic and you own who you are, and you make it clear that you know things, but you also don't know everything. I don't
Right,
think any of us, even in the highest levels of any company, nobody knows everything. And accepting that that's okay, but being
right.
honest about what you don't know. And I think that's a piece that sometimes people get afraid to be like, oh, if I say I don't know this or I ask this question, it's going to make me look bad or people are going to think I don't know enough. And sometimes I think women feel a deeper pressure to always have the answer, to always, know what that next thing is. And that realization that you don't have to know everything,
It's
but
funny
I
that
agree. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say it's funny that you bring that up because in the beginning of my career, I felt like I was chasing what everybody thought I should be or what, they wanted me to be. And I found that I wasn't being myself. And because of that, I wasn't being as impactful or successful as I could be. So kind of once I centered myself and got back to what I do and what I know, that's when I really started seeing the growth.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, and I don't think they want to be somebody else,
Mhm.
but they want to fill whatever mold that the company has set out for them. So, I think there's a lot of elements to being confident, and I think time is absolutely just a big key piece of that. But it's also a continual thing that, people have to work on all of the time, consistently.
Right.
We had talked a little bit about just kind of it takes an organization to really promote women, and you had mentioned mentorship and learning. How would you say that women can support other women within an organization?
Yeah, I think, being there and developing those relationships, I think that's really important. And I think um, it's easy for us to understand the perspective, of course, women to women, right, and where we're coming from and how we communicate. So being available, making sure that we're pouring into that person and, we're listening to them, we're developing them, we're coaching them. But putting ourselves out there and being, just being that encouragement, making sure that we are there, that we are creating these networks, that we are creating this feedback and this relationships, I think is so important. I feel like as a woman, if I'm continuing to advance in my career and, and really develop and learn, I need to be able to give back. I can't just solely focus on me and what I can do, but how do I develop a good team? How do I develop good associates that are going to pour into the organization and then are going to help them, achieve the career goals that they want, whatever that may be, whether it's leadership or not. But how do we continue to develop that?
Yeah, I think I've seen, too much woman on woman crime in my day where, I think there's certainly tendencies sometimes to not be supportive of each other. And it's stop looking at it as a competition. I think it's
Right.
looking at it as we're all in this together. And no matter what department you're in, no matter what
Mhm.
company you work for, we're all in it together. And we all succeed when, individuals succeed within the community. And I think there just needs to be a refocus on that, and that we can support each other. Sometimes when you think of support, people think about it of a woman like yourself in a leadership position supporting women coming up, and that's certainly a very key element to it. But there's other parts of it where it's women that aren't in the higher ranking positions yet supporting those women that are. And it's not, it's a two-way street. It's not just one way or the other. And that we all need, to participate in the elevation of women in this space.
Mhm.
We talked about we're always certainly looking for new initiatives to bring more women into material handling. Like I said, we've made tremendous strides. And I say we, I had nothing to do with it. It was really Mahita and a lot of the people that came before me. But what tips would you give to women starting out in this space?
Yeah, wow. I would say don't be afraid to step out. Don't be afraid to step out and learn something new, to take on a new challenge. Be willing to put yourself out there. Be willing to speak up. Be willing to make yourself uncomfortable to grow. Uh, we're not going to get anywhere if we just stay in our box, if we stay in what feels right or feels comfortable. But how do we make an impact? How do we make the organization better? How do we make the industry better? And then that's really just challenging ourselves and not being afraid to step out and do what we know we can do.
I love that. I think stepping outside yourself is so important to grow.
Hmm.
Um, so, Katie, you have made it to our final lightning round of 2022. I don't know if you know how big of a deal this is, but it's a pretty big deal.
Okay.
Um, so I have 10 lightning round questions that I'm going to ask you. I tried to make them as appropriate as possible. I'm going to ask you the question. You're just going to give me what comes to your head first. This is just our way of getting to know members and guests a little bit better. So, are you ready for the final lightning round of 2022?
Oh, I think so. Let's hope that confidence kicks in now.
All right. Um, I like to start off easy and it gets progressively harder.
Okay.
Do you prefer social time or alone time?
Alone time.
Amen. Um, do you have your own Netflix account or do you use somebody else's?
I have my own and I supply many others.
Same. Um, what is not a big deal to most people, but is torture to you?
Oh man, that's a good one. Not a big deal to most, but torture to me. I really hate when people say same difference. That is something
Okay.
that just drives me nuts. I don't understand that saying.
Now that you say it out loud, I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't know that it makes
No,
sense.
it doesn't make sense to me.
Would you rather be in a zombie apocalypse or in a robot apocalypse?
Oh my gosh. I guess zombie apocalypse, I feel a little more comfortable killing them than I do the robots.
All right. What object do you misplace or lose the most?
Mm, my glasses.
I was like, you don't have them on now. Did you already lose them today?
No, they're sitting here next to me. So,
Okay.
yes.
Give me one thing that you dislike about Zoom meetings.
Oh, hmm. I just, I like the personal connection, and I don't feel like you have that through a Zoom meeting.
What would you say is your favorite holiday tradition?
Hmm. So my family, we go camping for Thanksgiving every year, so that's probably my favorite. We've been doing it for about 12 years now, and that's the thing I look forward
Oh,
to the most.
that's fun. Do you do like a turkey over a fire, or like roast it, or like
No,
deep
my
fry
dad
it?
fries it, so he'll do a deep fried turkey for us.
That's cool.
Yeah.
In Chicago, camping season is definitely over by
Oh
November.
yeah.
Do you make any New Year's resolutions?
Oh no, I don't. I
What was
figure there's stuff I need to work on all the time. So
what was your first job?
driving a tractor. So my cousin had a land clearing business. I'm originally from Florida. He had a land clearing business, so that's what I would do. I drove a tractor all summer, and that was my first job.
Hey, you get a nice tan on that, probably.
Oh, it was fantastic. I stayed in
Yeah, I'm
shape
like,
when I was tan. It was amazing.
um, would you rather walk to work in heels or drive to work in reverse?
Drive to work in reverse. I don't want to go anywhere in heels.
See. Well, Katie, you made it through our lightning round successfully. I don't think I was able to stump you at all, so that's fantastic. Do you have any parting words for our listeners today?
I just really appreciate you taking the time to have me on here. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone has a great holiday season.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. And thank you to all of our listeners, especially for your support through 2023 or 2022 and going into 2023. As I've said, we've already started building a content calendar. If there are topics that you're interested in hearing about in this next year or guests you would like to have on, please contact somebody at the MHEDA office and we can talk through that with you. But we certainly look forward to providing you more content through the next year and years to come. So thank you, everyone, and have a great end of the year.